Okay, welcome to the press conference of older student debtors, the Debt Collective's group of debtors who are over age 50, who are mad at that they are aging into their student debt, and are fighting and organizing to get their debts canceled and everybody else's debt canceled. This is a special group of older student debtors. We have been meeting for several weeks, organizing for a few years. And this week on Thursday, older student debtors are descending on Washington, D.C. to meet with the White House, to meet with members of Congress, and to meet with the Department of Education to demand that these policymakers use their responsibility and their powers to change the situation, to cancel debt and release these debtors who have been paying for years on unjust debts. Debtors over age 60 are the fastest growing demographic of student debtors. We are not aging out of our debts, we are aging into them. And absent swift and bold government action, this problem will continue to worsen. So today we're having a press conference. I'm very honored to introduce you to a few of the leaders of our caucus of older student debtors and for you to hear some of their stories. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Miss Gail Gardner.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm Gail Gardner, and I actually called this whole issue with me a broken promise, sorry note by the American government. Americans over 60 are the fastest growing demographic of student debtors, and I should know. I'm one of those, and at this moment, I am 77 years old. And as of today, I owe $549,497 and a measly 20 cents in student loan debt. As seniors stretch limited across the rest, rent payments and medical bills, groceries and gas, student loan payments often end up getting paid last, if at all. So decades of broken student relief programs, corrupt loan services, and government neglect have meant that millions of older Americans drag decades-old student debts into their retirement. I know. Absent swift, bold policy, change, and clear political leadership, this crisis will only deepen, and the debtors will get older, the debts will get bigger. That's why on Thursday, September 12th, I am going to Washington, D.C. with a group of older student debtors to demand the White House and the Department of Education finally take responsibility for clearing the student debts burdening myself and millions of older Americans. This will be the first time in history that elders led the charge for student debt cancellation for older debtors and for everyone. Despite the Fair Rights' ongoing attempts to block student loan relief, canceling student loans remains perfectly legal and utterly necessary. And fortunately, there are tools the Department of Education can still use to quickly deliver relief to those who need it most. Federal regulations specifically enable the Department of Education to discharge student loans based on the age of a debtor. The Biden-Harris administration must use this provision to liberate older debtors without delay. If they don't, millions of us will take these unpayable debts to the grave. Like so many others, I took on student debt in order to make my life better for myself and my family. As a single parent, nothing was more important to me than caring for my children, feeding them, clothing them, offering them extracurricular activities. I did not want to live on welfare or raise them on public assistance. Not at all. I wanted to take care of my family and I wanted to contribute to my community. So I got a master's degree in English education and became an English teacher. For 20 years, I worked in low-performing schools within communities of color like the ones I grew up in the Bronx. I loved teaching, but mostly I loved my students. I traveled to watch them play football in college, perform in the band. I went to their college graduations. Every now and then, I sent them a few dollars or a care package or called them, their parents, to say hello, or even just chat in the grocery store. Working as a teacher were the best years of my life, but the work didn't pay. After 20 years of working in the school district, I retired. I was tired and I couldn't afford to retire from working. So at the age of 65, I went back to school to get a master's degree in pastoral counseling. I decided on pastoral counseling because as a leader in the church, as a survivor of sexual abuse, I wanted to learn how to facilitate healing conversation that could help my community. And my community was hurting. A number of older women in the church had been silent on their experiences of sexual abuse as children. And these women would leave my office with some release and courage to address the nightmare and maybe share it with others. This work also deepened my advocacy work on sexual assault, including my efforts to track down details of my own rapist and rape kit abandoned for decades. Today, a law expanding rape kit tracking systems in Florida is named after me. As my advocacy and counseling has taught me, absent political leadership, injustice festers while victims suffer in shame, even though they have done nothing wrong. This knowledge fuels my commitment to fighting for student loan relief today. We all know people are shamed for being poor in this country when the real problem is an economic system stacked in favor of the rich. As a single mother with multiple jobs, making payments on my loans was extremely difficult, even with an income-driven repayment plan. Each time I received a notice from the loan servicer, my blood pressure would rise. Anxiety and depression would set in. I rarely opened these envelopes, allowing them to pile up until I occasionally worked up the courage to open and shred them. After all, I already knew what they said, and I knew I did not have the money. The sum was so overwhelming, you'd think I had a medical degree, Juris Doctor degree, and a doctoral degree, not to mention a seven-figure salary. As I watched the interest compound, I felt trapped with no way out. However, there is a clear exit from this nightmare. For the Biden-Harris administration to cancel our student loans using the clear authority they possess. Until the president and the Department of Education take responsibility for canceling these old, unpayable, unjust debts, this crisis will continue to fester across the generations. Today's young debtors are tomorrow's older debtors. For decades, millions of older debtors have crouched in shame, imagining ourselves as failures when in reality the system has failed to us. But we will no longer be duped into suffering alone. This week, for the first time in history, older student debtors will older student debtors will go to Washington, D.C. to demand our student loan debt gets canceled in our lifetime, not at our funerals. We can't afford to wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gail. That was very powerful. Glad to hear from you. I'm going to invite Laura Sweeney to speak next. Bear with me as I line up the... Go ahead, Laura, whenever you're ready. Oh, I have to turn your video on, sorry.
Hello. My
Hello.
name is Lo. Hello. Can you hear me?
Crystal clear.
Okay. My name is Laura Sweeney. I'm 61 years old. I have 160,000 in student debt, which started out as a little over 60,000. I have taught school for 20 years. That I did other teaching too, but I was in the public schools for 20 years. I am currently retired at age 61. I taught the 20 years all in Georgia. Now I'm a South Dakota resident, but my teaching was done in Georgia. My retirement is $1,400 monthly, but student payments were as much as $1,500 monthly. I also have an autoimmune disease called sarcoidosis and prediabetes. So many of us start out thinking that we're going to be healthy, thinking that we will be able to pay the debt, but we don't realize that we could get ill and that our retirement might be lower than the payments. It makes it very difficult to purchase a car, to get credit. It decreases the credit score. So I'm no longer teaching, and the PSLF didn't pay off the debt. In the beginning, I was promised that if I taught for 10 years, it would all be paid off. And I did teach for 20 years. And I was going to teach for 15 more years, but I didn't realize that I would have an autoimmune disease. So I no longer teach anymore, and I'm hoping that someone in Washington can help us find an answer to this problem. I believe that the debt has been mismanaged. And that's all I have to say today. It's really simple. Retirement is not very much, but the debt is very high. And many of us are going to take this debt to our graves. Thank you.
Margaret, are you able to turn your video on?
Okay, here I am.
We're ready whenever you are. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, everyone. My name is Margaret Salomi. I'm a member of the 50 over 50 cohort at Debt Collective, and I'm based in Dover, New Hampshire. Student loans didn't ruin my life, but they turned it into an uphill battle for almost 3 decades. I finished my PhD in 1996. By 2023, I owed $100K, up from the $68K I started out with. I'm 59 years old. In the late 90s, I experienced a worsening of a chronic illness I'd been living with since my 20s. I was fired from my job due to my illness and was unable to work full-time until I was 41. That meant I could never pay more than the interest on my loans, and the balance kept growing. It meant I skipped on health care, only seeking treatment when my symptoms worsened. So-called preventive care was out of reach. Forget dental or vision, or saving for retirement or buying a house. For 12 years, I lived in a certifiable tenement, but I was grateful for rent that never went up as long as I never complained about rodents, lack of maintenance, and filthy common areas. Now I'm digging out, having had my loans discharged in 2023. I'm struggling with a second chronic health issue that has made me effectively disabled, and I'm wondering what I'll do when the tax bill on discharged loans comes due. Every day I try to remind myself that I'm not alone, even though student loan debt has shaped how I've lived my life for almost 30 years and will continue to do so in the foreseeable future. Perhaps I could have saved for retirement and bought a home to spend my golden years in if I hadn't had to make student loan payments and even potentially pay tax on the discharged loans. I remind those with influence over the matter to allow student loan recipients to retire with dignity and not have to carry a balance to the grave. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Margaret. I'm going to invite Dorothea to speak next. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Rita Dual PhD, and my call to action is the demand for debt collection for all people over the age of 50. Because if we are still carrying this debt, it's life circumstances, high interest rate, poor servicing program, and it is really a burden to us, to all of us. I was a single mother on welfare in 1973 when I went to school to improve my life. I went part-time and worked part-time for 5 years and received a BA, and another 3 years and received a master's in counseling. I worked in my profession as a counselor in a community-based mental health clinic in Oakland, California for 15 years. I had no student debt. I was able to pay it off at the time because public universities at the time were priced for the public. My debt was $3,000 and I was able to pay it off working at a community-based public institution, counseling sexual assault survivors and other people, low-income people in crisis. The cost of living began to skyrocket in the late 80s and the early 90s. And my daughter had developed a mental illness in the latter half of the 80s, and her treatment was expensive as an adolescent. In 1991, she gave birth, and it was apparent that she was not going to be able to parent or raise her daughter. I began looking for another job to increase my income. And in the process of being devastated by my daughter's illness and the reality of raising another child, I was afraid if I didn't, my granddaughter would end up in foster care, a fact that frightened me because I knew working in low-income minority communities, the experience of girls in foster care was horrendous. I found another position in a public university as a clinical counselor. I love my career. I love my students. I also had increased overhead raising my daughter and raising my granddaughter and taking care of a daughter with an advanced state of mental illness, which turned into self-medicating and a drug habit. In order to advance in my institution or in the field of psychology as a Black woman, I would need an advanced degree. I applied for a graduate program in clinical psychology at the Wright Institute in Berkeley in 1996. My mother relocated from New York to help me care for my granddaughter and get through school while I continued to work at San Francisco State University. I took out loans to attend the Wright Institute, which was the only money available to me. My progress was slow as the cost of living became more expensive and raising my granddaughter was hard. We were paying 2 rents, my mother and me. I decided to use some of my student loans to buy a home so that we could live together and it would be easier for me to work and go to school, as working towards a doctorate requires long hours of research and study. It took me 10 years to complete my doctorate, my degree, and receive my doctorate in philosophy and clinical psychology. I was overwhelmed and overburdened by all that I've had to do. At this time, I had been at San Francisco State University for 20 years. I started repaying my loans, which were over $100,000 by this time. I had gotten a better position at the university and taught some classes, but my daughter had been self-medicating for some time, which we didn't know about, and had another child, a boy, this time with special needs. This crushed the 3 of us. My granddaughter was just becoming a teenager, and my mother was aging rapidly and showing signs of dementia. I was feeling burdened by student loans, work obligations, and family responsibilities. I felt I would never have a life not being in debt or caring for my responsibilities. I felt like the dreams I had originally dreamt when I thought school and education was the road out of poverty had turned into a never-ending road of higher class poverty. I felt defeated, overwhelmed, betrayed by society and life circumstances. My mother's Alzheimer's progressed rapidly and forced me to care for I was forced to care for my grandson, who had 4 heart surgeries from the age of 2 years old. I decided I needed to retire to care for my mother and my grandchild. I still hadn't reached the repayment threshold for forgiveness of my loan, even though I had worked in public service positions for 40 years by my retirement. I was told by my loan servicer that retirement, my loans would not be eligible for forgiveness. My loan services had changed 3 times during the course of trying to repay these loans. I feel I have followed all the rules, given service to my community, society, and my family, and it's unfair that public service at my level has not reached the reward has not recognized and rewarded as in politics or the private sector. I am angry and depressed and deserve debt relief. My 75th birthday will be September 27th of this year, and I owe $265,000 of student loans, which I have served my community graciously and with pride, and I feel that those loans should be relieved. As for myself and other older debtors, it is not our fault that we are in this position. Thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you very much, Dorothea. Appreciate hearing from you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna invite Renita to join us next. whenever you're ready, Renita, feel free to turn on your video and share. Thank you. Oh, sorry, we have to ask you to unmute.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Rita Walker, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I would never have imagined that as I approach my 60th birthday, I will be approaching with over $200,000 in student debt. The idea itself has become paralyzing. It is the realization that I will probably literally work myself to death. I currently work 2 jobs because of my student loan payments. Those payments were $1,800 a month. I recently took money out of my 401k to get the mortgage, my student loan payment down to $1,300 a month, but that is still more than my actual mortgage. My story, I'm sure, as you've heard today, is not unique, but yet it is. I got married, had 2 wonderful children, but then life happened. I became a widow in my 30s, 2 small children. I was in the process of pursuing my education, all while working in corporate America and raising children. That itself began to stretch out my educational journey and the amount of money I needed to pursue my education. As my children aged up, I found myself still in school and 2 children who also wanted to pursue their education, which I fully supported as their sole supporter. I took out Parent Plus loans in order for them to pursue their education. After 20 plus years of loan consolidations, loan payments for all 3 of us, my balance has ballooned out of control. At this point, I feel like it is a hopeless situation. I don't see any resolution to this situation in my lifetime, and I'm at the point that I don't think I will be able to retire with this debt hanging over my head. Literally, I think death is the only way out. It's the only possible solution to be able to get some resolution with this student debt. Even with the IRS guidelines of allowing student loan payment matches toward my 401k, my employer won't make those matches unless I decide to go back to school. And then, of course, they will give me $5,200 for re-education and reimbursement. But why would I do that with I'm already saddled with $210,000 of student loan debt? Again, no relief. That is why I'm asking the Department of Education to cancel student loan debt for older Americans. Let us retire undebted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renita.
Yes,
I'm
you're welcome.
really glad to hear from you. I am going to invite one borrower to speak to the reporters who came, one final borrower, Jim Cummings. And then after that, any reporters that are here and have follow-up questions, I invite you to reach out with our press secretary, Braxton Brewington, for additional questions or needs about our upcoming action after Jim speaks. So bear with me as I do the tech side. Thank you. Okay, Jim, thanks everybody for your patience. Jim, you should be able to turn on your video now. Take it away whenever you're ready.
And people can see me now. All right. Hi, my name is Jim Cummings. I am 64 years old. My wife and I have a combined $220,000 of student loan debt, mostly for a Parent Plus loan taken out for our son to be able to pursue his dreams. My wife and I have had to give up retirement in order to pay off these loans. I felt pretty alone in this, but hearing my comrades today make me realize that my level of debt is not unusual. I have a monkey on my back. It weighs $63,000, up from its birth weight of $52,000 after repaying $29,000. You've heard of boy math and girl math? This is student loan math. It felt the heaviest when I was sick with stage 4 cancer last year. I still have a remnant bump from that right here. I was too sick to work at all. In my hospital bed, I was too sick for this boomer to watch all of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I could barely stay awake. But the monkey on my back told me that I could not be too sick to call Sally Mae and ask for a 2-month forbearance for my $900 monthly loan payment. There is a longer version of this story, which you can see on TikTok, showing how student loan desperation got me into 16 months of a crazy, high-stress, accelerated nursing school program. This program knocked down my immune system to the point where I developed stage 4 HPV-related cancer. Yes, I'm in complete recovery now. Thank you for asking. Trust me when I say that I have been cut off from admission opportunities in grad programs and in entry-level nursing positions due to my age. They can't admit it. Penn Medicine estimates that it cost $88,000 to train a new grad nurse to be an independent hospital worker, which is more than twice what I paid for nursing school tuition. I'm sure that many recruiters do not look twice past the Bachelor of Science 1983 line on my resume. If we're going to expect older people to keep contributing to the economy, our society needs to subsidize industry's perceived cost in hiring elders. What I am asking for here is not for you to force Sally Mae to cancel my loan. Oh, would that you could. But for the president to use his power under the Higher Education Act to cancel the federal monkey directly on my wife's back, indirectly on mine, and on the backs of thousands of elders. And finally, I want to shout out to my friend Chris Vestuto, an elder friend of mine from college. 10 years ago, he went on Jeopardy and won $24,000. Did he use this money to take a vacation or buy a new motorcycle? No, he used it to pay off his student loans. Please let us retire and not need to go on to game shows to pay off student debt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's great to hear your story, and thank you to everybody who shared their stories so far. Thanks to the press that have attended. This is the 50 over 50 group of older student debtors, and we are going to Washington, D.C. on Thursday. This is the first time in history that an action in D.C. calling for the cancellation of student debt is being led by our elders. And it's time for the country to listen. I'm going to keep, we still have some of our comrades on the line who are hoping to share their stories. I'm going to keep inviting folks and keep the recording running, although I realize we're past our 30 minutes. Thank you to everybody who can make it, and please reach out to Braxton Brewington with any follow-up questions. I see a question from Kimberly. Kimberly, are you able? Go ahead if you want to ask your question.
I'm sorry, I came in late. I had to come in late, so I'm not sure where I am with this. Am I able to record or?
Yep, no problem at all. I'm gonna kick you into the attendees, and then I'll call on you in a couple minutes, and you can just it'll record your story automatically when you become a speaker. Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, glad you're here.
Thanks. All
right. So I am going to pass the mic to Miss Athena Blue. Athena, if you're able to come on. Okay, Athena, whenever you're ready, I think you should be able to unmute yourself and turn your video on and share your story. Great.
Okay, hello. I'm just going to start out with different excerpts from a news report or from a college news report that was written a few years ago by a young lady there at the University of California, Irvine. And she starts out saying, the report says, during Reagan's campaign for the governorship in California in 1966, he publicly criticized the University of California system. Reagan referred to these student protesters as brats, freaks, and cowardly fascists. And in an interview with the San Francisco Chronicle, Reagan's education advisor, Roger A. Friedman, stated, "We are in danger of producing an educated proletariat." That's dynamite. We have to be selective on who we allow to go through higher education. This belief has shaped higher education to become a privilege of the upper class, with tuition serving as a barrier to those from working class backgrounds. Now that we know who and how the student debt crisis started, let me tell you how this has affected me personally. My name is Athena Blue. I'm a widow. I'm a mother of 5 grown children, 5 grandchildren, and I'm a retired registered nurse. I attended college and received my degree in nursing in Brunswick, Georgia. I've been a registered nurse for over 40 years, and I was the wife of a 20-year military veteran and U.S. Army Ranger who served his country with dignity and honor. My husband and I were both college grads. After graduation, my spouse was commissioned into the U.S. Army as a second lieutenant. Our initial college debt was peanuts compared to what our children had to pay for tuition. We worked our butts off and paid off our student loans before his first tour of duty was over. The biggest personal struggle I had to overcome is realizing that I'm not alone and that I'm not a bad person. I used to get depressed thinking about this debt that I'm in, but I'm good with it now. I know the truth behind the cause of this debt that affects both young and old alike. I also realize that the student debt crisis and the debt that I'm in isn't my fault. It was created purposely by people like former President Ronald Reagan, who believed that only certain people should have the right of higher education. In fact, this entire student debt crisis was started by him. People like him fear an educated working populace. They fear minorities being educated. This fear is fueled by greed and their fierce determination to uphold their status quo. In effect, it threatens their livelihood and their power status. Instead, they prefer a dumbed-down, deeply indebted populace whom they can easily manipulate and control. This is why I'm here with the Debt Collective 50 over 50. This right must be wrong. I worked hard for many years as a nurse in this country, caring for my family and others every day. I earned my retirement and I want to live in it in peace. I did not and do not plan to have to shovel out my hard-earned money for student debt I had to incur. The debt I have incurred now is not on my behalf. It was for my youngest son to attend college. He's a very talented artist who wished to pursue his passion in art and technology. My spouse's debt-to-loan ratio was too high, so it fell to me to sign those dreaded loan papers. I had to get a Parent Plus loan for my son to attend university. The intention was for my son to help pay off the loan when he got a job. However, it took several years for him to get a job that pays well enough for him to, number one, live on his own, but not enough to help out with this loan. So this is all on me. My current Parent Plus loan is a whopping $173,269, mainly because of interest accrual. For over 20 years, I've been paying over $1,000 a month on this loan, more than enough to have paid off this principal. And now, because I'm retired, none of the money that I paid off can be counted toward public service loan relief, which could easily mean cancellation of my balance. It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the interest that keeps accruing. I had actually paid off all the loan interest for this loan in 2020. The loan company immediately sold my loan to another lender. So here I am, starting all over again. Will I ever be able to pay it off? It seems unlikely, as these legal loan sharks are allowed to continue to sell these loans when they have received their interest. How can I pay off my loan if I can't ever get to the principal? I can't. I am now retired from nursing. I refuse to continue working to try to pay off a loan that will never end. My income is limited and I live within my means. I sold the home we lived in for over 40 years and live with one of my children to reduce my expenses so I can somewhat enjoy my retirement. This burden of a loan threatens my retirement. So how can you, Congress, the Department of Education, and White House allow this to continue? How can you allow seniors to be subject to predators like this? Have you no moral compass, no shame? I call on Congress, the Department of Education, and the White House to cancel student debt for all, because it is an intentional roadblock to deter working class people, and especially minorities, from achieving higher education and pursuing the American dream. If they do, what a huge cost burden they incur. This is an injustice to the American people. It is your moral duty to make this right. Cancel student debt for all now. The end.
Thank you very much, Athena. Incredible stuff. I am going to invite Deanna next to join us. Give me a second while I arrange that. Deanna, you should get a little, okay, great. And I think when you're ready, you should be able, Deanna, to unmute yourself and turn on your video.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, my name's Diana Alpini and I'm in Pennsylvania. And I hold a Master of Divinity from Moravian Theological Seminary. As a non-traditional student and single parent, I faced a significant challenge during my studies. In 2003, during my final year of seminary, I experienced this devastating betrayal, a sexual assault by a trusted mentor during an internship that shattered my career plans and left me emotionally scarred. To escape that trauma and rebuild my future, I had to pursue additional unplanned education, which only increased my total debt. In the years that followed, my confidence eroded like a sandcastle in the tide. Job interviews became minefields of anxiety. My relationships crumbled under the weight of my financial insecurities, and my financial stability felt like a foreign concept. I found myself flinching at the sight of my income and bills, second-guessing every purchase, and then adding insult to injury, the relentless compounding, accumulating interest planted seeds of doubt that grew into forests of fears, to be honest with you. I've been paralyzed by the thought that any financial misstep could be catastrophic. Since 2005, I've stared at this growing mountain of student loan debt. What was meant to be empowering has turned disempowering and, in fact, deadly from the stress. In 2020, I was in a critical car accident that nearly severed my left foot. In 2021, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, Sjogren's syndrome, and in 2022, I contracted COVID-19. These now chronic illnesses have negatively affected my ability to work. You'll never escape this, the debt whispers. So now, at 60 years old, without medical insurance and still single, I truly do face the grim reality that I might die before this debt is ever paid off. The total has grown to well over $200,000, turning my dreams into a lifelong nightmare. Today, I'm here to turn my fear and frustration into advocacy. I stand with the debt collectives 50 over 50, and I declare that we must fight for justice through full debt cancellation. No one should live and die under the crushing weight of student loans. I intend for my voice to become a beacon of hope for so many of us with the scars of this unjust debt, and to serve as a testament to my resilience and a rallying cry for change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Fantastic to hear from you. I am going to invite Becky ABA. ABA, if you would like to share. Okay, whenever you're ready, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn your video on.
Sorry, the video is dark.
That's okay.
Hold on, I have to rearrange some things here. I didn't realize it would be. Is that any better at all? Not really.
No,
Hold on.
no problem.
Okay, here.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Becky Wells, and I am a 63-year-old proud mother of 2 college graduates who are valued members of our community, compassionate and productive citizens. My mission has been accomplished, but I'm shackled with over $200,000 in student loan debt. And this is how it happened. Nearly as soon as our children were born in the early 1990s, my husband and I began saving for our children's education through savings bonds and contributions from my parents. However, like many families in Detroit in the 1990s, we were hit hard when the auto industry left. My daughter was 9 months old when my husband's job was downsized. By 1997, I was a single mother of 2 small children, but my educational expectations for them remained unchanged. In 2006, with college on the horizon and tuition increasing exponentially, I cashed in those savings bonds and invested that money, along with the money my parents had set aside, in the stock market. By the fall of 2008, the stock market crashed and all of their college money was gone. My former husband and I scrambled to save, hoping the stock market and the country would rebound, but it was slow. But there was no doubt in my mind that my children, 2 Black teens from the city of Detroit, needed to go to college. So I took out student loans, borrowed from my meager 401k, and my children took out student loans and participated in work-study programs. Their dad, who had worked for Daimler Chrysler, had taken a buyout and had to retire, but was able to get a small Pell Grant for my son for his first year in college. Initially, my loan payments were just about the same as my mortgage, which was completely unsustainable. I ended up falling behind and started receiving those bill collector calls at both my home and at my job. The pressure to go into forbearance or consolidation or whatever it was just confusing, and the interest skyrocketed. I was absolutely exhausted going through menopause, working weekends without pay as the workload piled up, and from caring for my mother, who was struggling with congestive heart failure and dementia. I had no idea if or when I could ever retire. Finally, during the pandemic, we got relief from those student loan payments. And at the same time, I contracted COVID-19. I ended up deciding I needed to save myself and retire in 2021. Today, the pressure is on again, and I feel strangled by outrageous debt and interest. Initially, I just wanted relief from the interest. You know, if I could just pay the principal, if I could just get to a point where I could pay the principal. But as I learned more about debt forgiveness for congresspersons and taxpayer bailouts for corporations and banks, I wondered, where is the debt relief for everyday people, especially for older debtors? I'm angry that there's no way out for me with Parent Plus loans to get any relief. I raised two outstanding American citizens who have never seen the day inside of a prison cell or in a drug or rehab, alcohol rehab center. Do I have to die to get debt relief? I'm calling for President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to give full debt cancellation to older debtors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. Really glad to hear from you. I'm going to invite Kimberly to join us next.
Can you see me? I'm not sure if you could. Hello.
Let's see. Okay, you should be able to turn your video on now. Great, and whenever you're ready, take it away.
Can you see me okay?
We can, thanks.
All right. Okay. Aim higher, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Aim for a higher education, they said. Go to college and you'll have a better life, they said. After earning your bachelor's, strive for a master's, they urge. They promised that education was the key to a better quality of life. And so I followed their advice. But what they failed to mention was the significant caveat. The cost of this education would leave me in debt, potentially worse off than before. They also didn't mention that in many other countries, higher education is free. My name is Kimberly Simmons, and I am 50 years old. In my pursuit of the so-called American dream, I found myself at the age of 36, a first-generation university graduate. I chose to carve out a better path for myself, aiming for more than just a high school diploma. This decision wasn't easy, as I once doubted whether or not I was college material. No one in my family had ever attended college, so I had no point of reference. Without a mentor to guide me, I forged my own path. I transitioned from a job I despised as a corporate travel agent to earning a bachelor's degree in theater design and production from the University of Cincinnati Conservatory of Music. At the time, it seemed like the best decision I could have made, despite the unexpected twists and turns and challenges. Like many others, I committed to returning to school, especially as a non-traditional student. Having experienced life before returning, I was no stranger to paying bills. My plan was simple: go back to school, get a better paying job as a wig and makeup stylist, pay off my loans, and live the American dream. But life had other plans. One crisis followed another, and my financial outlook never cleared enough to achieve the goals of being debt-free. Major events like the pandemic and the uncertainty of the entertainment industry, exacerbated by the actors' strike, derailed my plans. On top of that, I had to put my career on hold to care for my elderly father. Despite these challenges, I continue to press on. I'm not seeking a handout, but rather a leg up. I'm asking President Biden to consider forgiving student loans for those of us who are 50 years of age and older, so we might still have a realistic chance to achieving the American dream, a dream of owning a home, properly preparing for retirement, and simply being able to live. Death should not be our only option to relieve these old, unpayable debts. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you, Kimberly. Wonderful to hear from you. I am going to invite Linda to speak next. Okay, Linda. Wonderful.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Great.
I have to
Yep.
pull back up my story. All right, thank you, everyone. I'm writing to share my story of why student loan debt for college should be erased. The biggest hurdle for overcoming student loan debt is that having this balance has made it so that no matter how high level my salary and role is, I still need to budget tightly for monthly expenses. Now that my oldest son is in college as well, having my student loan erased will allow for me the ability to help support his education and future without falling into the current model of building generational debt. Growing up with social economic challenges, I always sought after education as a pathway to overcome poverty. My life goal, even as a young child, was to grow up and make sure that I get a good job so that I can have a roof over my head and always secure food on the table for not just me, but the future family that I envision. I never wanted to ever feel like I was on the brink of being homeless or starving ever again. I never imagined that I would have to pay back student debt indefinitely in order for my childhood dream to come true. I've consistently made sure that no matter how hard my job was, I sustained one so that I can continue to make my student loan payment in addition to regular living expense costs. I've made payments for over 10 years in excess of $450 a month and have not only paid off approximately 1/3 of the balance. The only reason my balance was reduced by 1/3 was because the federal government put a freeze on student loan payments during COVID. Because the interest rates were temporarily frozen and I continued to make payments anyway, my principal balance was finally shrinking after over 10 years of making payments. Since then, each monthly payment went right back into the perpetual payment cycle that doesn't make a dent in paying off my student loan balance and is now affecting my ability to support my next generation, my children, in their ability to attend college without also falling into generational debt. After graduating with an advanced degree in business finance, I was able to obtain the higher level positions where I have a say in trying to make a positive impact in an organization. I've invested more than 20 years of my career working in education, mostly in a public setting, to help influence opportunities for our youth in the highest needs areas. I foresee a pathway as well in education, particularly in my old stomping grounds of East Oakland, for our youth so that they too will have an opportunity to make a decent living wage and to have a good chance at life. Having a voice at the table came with what seems to be a perpetual cost, which is to pay my student loans for the rest of my life. I hope that my story will be heard and that changes are made so that our future generations don't feel that student loan debt is the only pathway to a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Great to hear from you. And great to hear from everybody. I think that's a wrap for, is there anybody on the call who has not gotten a chance to share their story? I think we've gotten folks, but if you haven't, please speak up. This has been a really powerful morning. Amazing to hear from folks. We'll keep telling these stories. And we are going to Washington, D.C. to tell these stories, and we won't stop until the debt's gone. So thanks for everybody for being here for this morning. Looking forward to staying in touch.